Greg Gard gets his signature win of the season, putting the Badgers in the national spotlight and squarely in the race for the Big Ten championship. That's right, the Big Ten championship. Can they lift the trophy this season? I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us. And on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the Badgers finally got over the hump against one of the conference's elite teams with a pivotal win on the road at Purdue. We talk through the massive game, give you our player ratings, and do a little basketball buy or sell. With that big victory, the conference crown is officially up for grabs. We'll go over the remaining schedules of all the contenders and talk through our chances to take the title. We are at the Bucky Report on YouTube and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. Appreciate all the support for the show. Apologies for last week. I was out of town at a conference for work, so we did not get a show out last week. I know the YouTube algorithm does not like that. Sorry about that. We like to keep it consistent with our Sunday shows. So thank you all for joining us back here again today.
Put that one on me for not filling in.
With so much to celebrate. I mean, listen, we talk a lot of football on this show. Today is going to be dedicated solely to basketball because after yesterday's game, and we've got a lot to look forward to, we're right in now the thick of basketball season. But we're obviously going to talk spring football soon. Justin, I mean, how are you? What an incredible game yesterday. I'm still riding high.
I don't even know what to say about this team offensively. It's the best offense we've watched since 2015. And it's very different in what we saw. Like that offense was more methodical and just so efficient. This is a little bit more free flowing and just, going up and down the court. And to their credit, they have players that are capable of doing it efficiently this year. You could be doing this with a bunch of guys that just don't understand. Just because something's free flowing doesn't mean that you shouldn't take bad shots. This team typically takes good shots. They really work the ball on the offensive end, and nobody is a ball stopper, which is a huge deal, I think, in terms of how efficient this offense has been this season. And that's really been allowing them to kind of grow as the season's gone on. And I think we're getting to the point now where you look at it, it's going to take a team to play really hot on offense in order to take Wisconsin down.
It's we saw such an offensive performance yesterday. It's fantastic. Thanks again for all joining us. Jason Geldon. Now I just lost my comment that I had up there. Jason Geldon says, no, Gabe Ramos says, fire me up, Rajeev. Don't worry, buddy. We will. Jason says, when you say Wisconsin, you said it all. Mo Dragon, back-to-back Badger content. That's right. Ryan just finished up a show on his Purdue Rewind on Locked On. Happy to give it back-to-back. So listen, Purdue, obviously massive win yesterday, 94 points in Mackey Arena, which is unheard of, by the way. That, like I said on the reaction show yesterday, I'm from Lafayette, Indiana. I've been to that arena many times growing up. That is a monstrous place to play. It's like the Black Cauldron, right? They're all like everyone's dressed in black. It's a crazy venue to play in. And all of a sudden, that's 2 consecutive wins against Purdue. We beat them last year in the Big Ten tournament as well. And then today as a top 10 team, both times, really impressive. Let's just talk through that game a little bit, Justin. What were some of your takeaways, first half, second half? Give me kind of your lay of the game.
I think we'd all agree the first half, there's definitely some feeling out. And I think there were some nerves playing in that arena because the crowd was good. Like you could hear how loud and how engaged they were as a fan base. So we saw Tonje come out and he was a little flat to start, but man, for a guy who missed his first, wasn't super efficient to start the game, he really closed about as good as you can in a game. It was nice to see Blackwell get on track in the second half. He struggled in that game for basically 3/4 of it and still ended up in double digits. He hit a couple of big shots when they needed them. To be honest, I mean, you look at that game, they look how efficient they had to be down the stretch in order to win that game by 10 points. Like, they scored virtually every time they brought the ball down the court. And they still only won by 10 in a game like that because Purdue was just on fire from three. And I know Ryan was pretty harsh on them, but they really didn't miss down the stretch. That's what kept Purdue in that game. Like, that could have easily have been a 15, 20-point game if Purdue is hitting at what they were, the clip they were hitting in the first half, which they weren't great from outside in the first half. Second half, much better. And that kept them in the game because they had a ton of timely threes.
We were 20 of 22 from 2-point field goals in that game. We missed 2 shots inside the arc the entire ball game. Now, we don't take that many. We only took 22 of them. But it's just that to me is a stat that I'm just like, how is that even possible? We overall, we were 12 of 30 from 3-point, which again, that we took 33 pointers, by the way, 30. It's crazy. 32 of 52 overall, shooting 61% from the field. That's obviously a game that's in crazy impact. Look, so there's a couple things I'll say right away. First of all, in the grand scheme of things, what an incredible win at Mackey Arena, right? It's a very difficult place to play. We got it done there. And defensively, so first half, I thought the big thing was post the Kamari McGee ejection, which, oh my God, by the way, let me just talk about that for a second.
There's no getting over that one.
I listened to Greg Gard's post-game press conference. And I know he hasn't watched it, but I was a little upset with Greg Gard because I think he should have taken a much more aggressive stance in the game and then after the game. He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, that, well, the officials said they really didn't have a choice. They had to eject him because it was a low blow. That's nonsense. I do know that, yes, if there is a low blow, technically that puts on the table a flagrant 2. But at the end of the day, flagrant 2 is intentional. It is brutal. Yeah. I think one of the words is there. It's punishing is one of the words. I believe
it's malicious, forceful contact. Right. And I don't think that there was anything malicious about that at all.
I don't think anyone can watch that play and immediately think, oh boy, like Kamari McGee's sole goal was to hit him in the nuts. No, he was trying to get around a good screen. And in fact, it was a bit of a moving screen, which he eventually got called for. So I cannot understand how the officials can go to the table, review the tape, and then say, yeah, that's a flagrant 2. We don't have a choice. If they really don't have a choice, that is a horrific rule that has to be changed. But I do think Gard needed to be more aggressive in that moment. That being said, one of the things that Greg Gard did do, I think, is tell his players, be more aggressive now, drive into the lane more. You know why? They just ejected one of our players. You knew that the referees were going to lean a bit more towards the Badgers at that point. Take advantage of that, and I think that was done really well. So back to the first half, the fact that we actually closed out the first half and we only were down a point at halftime is remarkable. Mm-hmm. In that moment, late in the first half, Purdue could have gone on a run and we could have been down 15 at halftime and the game was over. We closed it out from great play from Tonje, of course. And then in the second half, we just didn't miss. We had one, and for the record, 1.45 points per possession in this game. 1.45. If you know that stat in basketball, you know anything over 1 is a good number. 1.45 is absurd.
I saw 1.54. So
I don't think it was 1.54. I think it was 1.4.
Well, either one is elite.
Either one.
Like anything over like 1.25 is elite.
Yeah. It's some other thoughts. I think that one of the things you have to look at in this game is from a player. We're going to talk about players in a minute, but I thought Carter Gilmore's block on Trent Kaufman, was it Trent or was it Kaufman Wren, was incredible. If you haven't rewatched the highlights of that game, go back and check that out. Carter Gilmore's block, and I tweeted about it yesterday, was perfect. I mean, kept perfect verticality. It was not a foul by any means. It was a perfect block. He timed it up perfectly. I mean, this guy, by the way, is one of the best offensive big man scorers in the conference, in the country potentially. And Gilmore just stopped him. It was a beautiful block. So yeah, there was just so much to take away from that. And another thing I'll tell you, and I want your comment on this. We've had four games in February, right? Which last year is when our season turned. We've won all 4 of them, and 3 of them have been on the road. 3 games on the road, at Northwestern, at Iowa, at Purdue. We looked at the schedule at the beginning of February and thought, boy, that's a rough stretch of 3 road games, but we got them all done. Now, for the rest of the month, we're at home. I mean, remarkable way to start off the month.
Yeah, I think, what were our predictions coming into this stretch here? I was
I
like
think
6-1 or something like
you
that.
were 5-2. I think I might have been 4-3 or something. I mean,
I was 5-2. Nick was 6-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were like 4-3.
I might have been 5-2.
I think they're legitimately they can close with just one loss. Like at Michigan State's really the only team that truly scares me. If they're playing like they've played over the last month, I think they should beat everyone but potentially Michigan State. That's not to put shade on Illinois. I just think at the game at home, you hope that the crowd carries you, and that Illinois gets a little rattled just being in a game like that. But I don't think that there's nobody on Illinois that I look at and say this guy is so. They don't have the Kofi Coburn. They don't have like the last couple of years where they had a guy who was capable of just going in there and like dropping 30 plus and being just a guy you can't stop. There's talent, and a lot of it's young. So I think Wisconsin's got a chance if they play to the level that they should win that game. But I think there's a good closing stretch here, a chance to make a very big statement.
Yeah, I love this comment. I'm going to put this up from Bo Dragon, always a good friend of the show. When you rely on the 3 ball 100%, you can go to the Final Four or lose in the first round. This is a very interesting point, and I think it is something that is out there. What I would say to this, though, Bo, is we are so multiple offensively. We don't need, you're right. Like if we're cold, if everyone's cold, then sure, we can lose any game, which we know. But there are 5 starters who can all shoot the 3. There are 2 or 3 guys on the bench. Actually, the entire bench, Janicki, McGee, Gilmore, and Amos can all shoot the 3. We have 9 players who can actually shoot. And a lot of those guys can score on the inside as well. Certainly, Crown Winter can. And obviously, Tonje and Blackwell are so unique in their ability to drive. I actually don't really worry about the fact that we are a 3-heavy team because I think in general we've got a lot of ways to score. Do you agree with that, or do you think this is a fair point though? We can definitely lose because our defense is so bad.
Well, see, I disagree with it to an extent, and the reason why I will say that is you can argue that they're heavily 3-point reliant, but they're also a team that gets to the free throw line a ton, which is not something you see from the traditional 3-ball teams. Which is like you look at Golden State in the NBA. They typically can't get to the line because there's nobody that's capable of driving consistently. Wisconsin doesn't do that. If they close out hard, Wisconsin is willing to go downhill and go to the rim, and they've done that consistently, and that's been a big part of why they've had so much success. Not only do they shoot well from 3, but they also are capable of really getting the other team into a bind because they're so efficient from the free throw line, which means if they do get past you, they're typically going to the line. They're typically getting you in foul trouble, and they're typically finishing at the line at a high rate.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the players specifically. We'll talk through we're going to do some player ratings out of 10, Justin. Give me your ratings out of 10. We'll talk through some of the stats and anything that jumps off you on the box score about any of these. We'll start with what was pretty synonymously the player of the game. I think that's pretty clear. John Tonje, absolutely amazing performance yesterday. His stat line, 32 points off 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Just an unbelievable game. 4 of 9 from 3. Listen, I'm giving him a 10 just because I was thinking about a 9. I'm giving him a 10 just because without him, I mean, at Mackey Arena to have that kind of performance, we've seen performances like that at Mackey from a guy named Frank Kaminsky, from a guy named Johnny Davis. Like some of the best players we've had have gone to Purdue and played that well. Amazing game from Tonje.
Yeah, he's got to be a 10 in my opinion. He's way too efficient in that game to not give it to him. The guy was 32 points on 15 shots. That's as good as it gets.
It's the definition of efficiency.
Yep. And that was the thing that when we were talking about on Ryan's show, talking about Johnny Davis, that was his weakness. He would have 30 points, but it would be like on 22 shots or something like that. And you're like, okay, it's all right, but like you'd like to see a few less shots and getting the line more. Tonje is just very good at doing that. And that's why in the tournament I feel good about him, because he's the type of guy that's going to get it. If you have a really athletic team that's not also super mentally smart, he's a guy who's going to cause problems for you because he's going to get you trying to be too athletic against him. That's not the way you want to play him. You need to play him. You need to be disciplined and you need to play smart basketball against him. And then occasionally when you can get away with it, use your athleticism. But if you're jumping all over the place, trying to block shots and do whatever on Tonje, that's how you're going to put him on the line.
Yeah, and to know for anyone who's watching live, put your any questions you have in the comments. I just started a really good question from Tyler Strieber. We're going to talk about at the end of the show. A lot of good questions we're touching on. So I've got those started. We'll come back to them. John Blackwell. This is an interesting one. Give me your player rating on John Blackwell.
6.5, maybe.
Okay.
I don't think, I'm doing that on a scale of 5 being average, but he was really tough the first 3 quarters of that game, and he played really well down the stretch when they needed him to step up, because we saw how badly we need offensive efficiency. He made some incredible cuts down the stretch for them, and did just about everything you could ask for to get himself on the board and to play really well when they needed him. So he was probably 2 to start the game for most of the game, and then I think he was a 7 or an 8 to finish.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a 6. I just feel like I don't know what's going on with him lately. Like, look, and give him credit for picking it up and being clutch at the end of the game. There's a couple things I want to mention about Blackwell. First of all, I think, again, he looks a little bit tired. I don't know if his legs are just going. Now, we have had quite a stretch of playing 2 games a week. Now we have the week rest, which is good, and now we're back to it again with a very, very tough game on Tuesday against Illinois. So I'm a little concerned about how his endurance is going to hold up for the rest of the season, because when he plays tired, you can see a massive drop off in performance, which is concerning to me. The other thing I will say is I'm surprised that he never got an offensive foul on yesterday. When he clears out, he does so with the extending of the arm. You cannot extend your arm. Yeah. And I know that there were a couple that Purdue flopped, because believe me, Purdue's all about the flop, and I don't like that, but it's fine. He has to be more careful, because in the NCAA tournament, which we have said many times, the whistle blows so quickly in the tournament. You can get into foul trouble. Blackwell can have 2 fouls in the first 2 minutes, and then bam, all of a sudden, whoever we're playing, we're going to have a really tough game. He has to be better about that. I do still think his driving and dishing is really good. His aggressive play is really solid offensively. He works hard when he's not playing tired defensively, but he's a 6 for me. Luckily, we had the 10 in Tonje to kind of keep it going, but I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw yesterday from John Blackwell. Max Klesmit. I'll go first on this one. I'm going to say 8 for Klesmit. I think that I really was proud of him yesterday, because as I've now said for a couple weeks, his shooting percentage is still really bad, by the way. He went 1 of 6 again. Like, he's still 28% from 3, which is completely unacceptable for a good 3-point shooter. But he's doing the other things, Justin. He's playing hard on defense. He's driving into the lane, creating offense. Not the best defender, the best on-ball really well perimeter defender's not usually guarding him. So he has a little bit of that ability to be aggressive and take it to the lane, dish out, get those little floaters. His mid-range game has really stepped up. So I give him a lot of credit for what he's doing. He had 6 assists yesterday, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which really is good. Yes, 6 assists off 1 turnover. Really, really nice to see. He's an 8 for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Speaking of which, I look at him, and every time I see these games, he's at 28% still from 3, and I swear to God, every game he seems like he's under 25%. So I don't know how his average just never seems to drop. But
well, he was 33% for a few games in a row.
Oh, was he? Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, he took care of that.
We have a buy or sell about that.
Yeah, I agree with an 8. Like, I think that he was such a good facilitator in this game, and he really had some timely big drives that got them, especially that and one he had late in the game. Like, he had some really, really tough plays that he made when they needed him. They had virtually everyone step up late in this game, and he was one of the big ones that kind of helped them early in the game when Blackwell wasn't playing well.
Tyler Schreiber says, I just don't buy that, Rajeev, speaking about Blackwell's conditioning. He says, these are D1 athletes with all recovery tech, nutrition, etc. These guys all played AAU, where they played 3 games per day. 2 games a week shouldn't deteriorate your game. So, Tyler, I'm curious if do you agree that you're seeing him like that and you're just not understanding why? Because we saw this with Connor Segian too, by the way. We saw his legs kind of go near the end of the season. Now, I'm not saying Blackwell's out. I feel like there's a trend developing with Blackwell that I'm a little bit concerned about it. I'm just being honest. We're just from a straight, honest fan's perspective. Like, I am concerned that when the Big Ten tournament rolls around, March Madness rolls around, he really has to be the guy that can step up.
I mean, let's look at it this way, though. He did finish really strong in this game. So there's clearly something to the legs.
He did. That's a good point. And that's where it matters the most. So I agree with you on that.
And you're going to look at it. McGee being back on Tuesday is going to be a huge lift because they'll be able to give him a little bit more of a break.
For sure. Nolan Winter, give me your rating on Nolan Winter.
I think I'd put it probably at a 7. I would have liked to see him be a little bit more physical on the boards. I thought that overall he had a couple of really timely threes. But at this point, I think he's really coming into himself as a guy who kind of disrupts shots at the rim. And it's something nice to see from him. He struggles heavily, though, on the interior, being able to hold up against physical guys. Kaufman-Renn really kind of ate his lunch in the second half when he was going against him.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I like your score. I'll go 7.5 ish. I think overall, I'll go 7. I think you're right about 7. The 2 early threes were massive, right? Those were his only 2 threes he made. He was 4 of 7 from the field. He had 12 points, 5 rebounds, which I would like to see a little bit higher. He did have a steal. Yeah, I think. Listen, Winter is on a good trajectory to be obviously our key front court player next year. But he just needs to be more aggressive. There was one play where they had some good ball movement yesterday. And he had a pass low and he was very smart, right? He had good awareness, good patience. He pump faked. He went around to the other side of the basket and got a quick layup. Stuff like that is when he plays at his best versus when he just goes up and gets shots blocked, which he's had several times this season. So yeah, Winter for me was a 7. I think good game overall. Just keep going with that.
Yeah, he's solid. And he's been what he's been most of the season. Which is an efficient guy who doesn't really hurt you out on the court. Like we knew defensively, this was going to be a year where he's still going to be a work in progress. So I think he's been everything we could have hoped for this year so far.
Yeah. Steven Crowell. So there's a lot of discourse about how Steven Crowell played yesterday. I'm going to give Steven Crowell a 6. And I know that's going to be maybe 6, 5.5. I'll give 5.5. Got to be under Blackwell. He only took 1 shot and he made it. He didn't take a lot of shots because he was double teamed in the post nearly every time he touched the ball. As far as his overall stat line, which the bad thing was he only had 1 rebound. He had 3 assists, so he passed well out of that and no turnovers. That's a good game. I'm going to go 6. I think he's not anything to write home about. He didn't have one of his games where he was strong offensively because Purdue decided to take it away, which is fine. That's why we shot 33s yesterday. And I'm okay with this game. I don't have any issue with it. I know I was listening to Ryan's show that he was just doing before this. There was a comment about if we had lost, the story would have been Crowell. I disagree. The story would have been the defense. It would not have been Crowell played a good game. He made virtually no mistakes. He was 1 of 1 from the field with 1 rebound and 3 assists. Not a game that is a stat churner for him, but what can you really complain about with that game? I think he was fine.
I'm about as harsh as it gets on Crowell. I thought he was fine. I didn't think there was a lot of opportunity for him to take it. He wasn't forcing things on the floor. I felt like this was a game where you needed him to be the guy defensively in the interior. I actually thought he was solid against Kaufman-Renn. Kaufman-Renn had some really tough shots on him. But I thought for the most part, Crowell at least made him have to work for it a little bit, which is something that Winter isn't really capable of. And honestly, this is a game where I probably don't want him, with the way the offense was flowing, being too much of a ball stopper or being a guy who's trying to make plays on the interior, because guys were getting into the paint off the dribble, and I felt like we were really passing the ball well. There was no point to be touching the post a ton unless you're trying to get Kaufman-Renn in foul trouble. And you couldn't because they were doubling. So there's no point in throwing into the post when he's not going to have opportunity to work.
A couple comments on Crowell. Bo Dragon says, we all want Crowell to be someone he isn't, but he's doing fine. Tyler says Crowell was fine. Nothing special. Would have appreciated a bit stronger defense against TKR, but overall he gets a passable grade from me. And Mark F says he didn't force anything, stayed within the offense. I think that's exactly right. Yes, TKR had a great game, but TKR is really good. Okay. Yes. Trey Kaufman-Renn is a monster.
He's one of the better front court players in the entire Big Ten.
When you look at the best front court players in the conference, you immediately look at Trey Kaufman-Renn. You immediately look at Danny Wolf and Golden from Michigan. These are the best guys there are, and you're not going to stop. You're not going to stop Trey Kaufman-Renn. He is a really good player. Purdue seems always have these kind of bigs that are extremely good. Let's move on to the bench. Let's go with Jack Janicki, who I think we should start with because he had a great game.
Yeah, I gave him a 10. Like, you can't ask for more from that from a role player off the bench. I thought he played really well. He hit some big time shots for us. For a guy who's a freshman right now, you can't ask for more than that.
He had 11 points in 17 minutes. 11 points in 17 minutes off 4 of 6 from the field. Yeah, I mean, he took 6 shots and he had 11 points. Come on, like, let's go. A 10, absolutely a 10. Like, I think that I actually said yesterday that, Klesmit was my sort of runner-up for player of the game because he struggled lately. But Janicki had an amazing game. And he obviously was getting the shots that McGee normally takes, right? McGee is a 56% three-point shooter. He takes that corner three, and that's the way the ball moves in this offense. That is often open for the cutter, for the guys that are driving in to dish out. But he had to make them, right? Mm-hmm. McGee always makes those. McGee makes them at a massive clip. So Janicki had to come in there and do that exact thing, and he did, which is really a difficult thing to do in a game where you're playing at Mackey Arena, a place that's hard to play, and you don't normally get these minutes, right? So he really stepped up. It's amazing.
He's a tough kid. He's going to be a good player for us for the next several years. No, by no means am I saying he's going to be some kind of star, but he's going to be a really gritty, tough kid out there that's going to probably hit some big-time threes before his time is done in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about Janicki's defense? Do you feel like he's a solid on-ball defender? I feel like
he tries hard. I think he's a work in progress, but he gives effort, and that means, to me, that means a lot for a guy who's as young as he is, and he's going to get better as time goes on. He's got some work to do. He's not the greatest athlete, but he plays hard, and that's half the battle on defense.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I'm excited to see how he develops defensively more than anything else. Obviously, we know he's a three-point shooter and he can do that, but we'll see how it goes elsewhere. Let's give Kamari McGee a grade, even though he only got a few minutes. I mean, there's really not much you can say about Kamari McGee other than he absolutely got robbed, and he should not have.
We call him the player of the game because he sparked.
I mean, he sure did though, didn't he? Like I thought for sure, man, it was over after that. I was like, we're toast. But yeah, there's really no sense in giving him a rating. He barely even.
Yeah, played. He gets an incomplete. He probably would have been a factor in this game, and I really think as a ball handler, I really like having him out there because he just gives them something different at times and gives them somebody who has a little bit more juice with the ball in his hands than what Blackwell does. So I think he would have played a bigger role in this game had he had an opportunity in terms of like providing some real big moments, but we got robbed of that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Carter Gilmore. What's your grade on Carter Gilmore?
I think he's a 9. But like when you look at it from what the expectation is from somebody like Carter, he's been playing now at a very, very high level of what the expectation of him is throughout this season. And at this point, I think you need to look at it and like he had 2 massive blocks, hit a 3 in this one again. Like he's not always perfect with what he's doing offensively out there, but he's definitely taken a huge step compared to where he's been in the past. The energy and effort that he gives out there defensively and rebounding, like he had a couple of really big contested rebounds in this game where he made plays. So there's just so much positive he brings out on the floor.
I think you're so right about the contested rebounds. There were a couple that he really got, or like one that he got. His only rebound was that contested one, which was great. Like that's exactly what he needs to do. I give him an 8. I think that he missed the only 3 he took, but man, the block was a 10 out of 10. That block on Trey Coffin-Rent, again, just go back and watch it. It will blow your mind. Like the block he had at the end of the game on Braden Smith was whatever, right? But the block on Trey Coffin-Rent, when he basically is going up to posterize Carter Gilmore, he's like, no, get that out of here. And we have a buy or sell about him in a minute. Last one, Xavier Amos. Score player rating on Amos.
I'll give him a 5. I don't know how much he really provided on the floor. I think when you look at Amos as a guy that I just all honesty for this season, I think he's a guy you're going to expect a lot more from next year. And this is a growth season from him. So I try to give him some latitude a little bit in terms of how I view him as a player. He provides some athleticism, which I think they need at times out on the court. And they're going to need definitely going into the tournament. So I like him getting some minutes out there just to stay kind of comfortable in the game and getting just some reps mentally.
Yeah, I think where his biggest key is to be that athletic stretch four that we need, especially on the defensive side. Like, remember that in the second half against Minnesota earlier in the year, he was the guy who shut down Dawson Garcia. And there have been very few people in this league that can shut down Dawson Garcia. We're going to play them again. And I think Amos is probably going to play 20, 25 minutes in that game because he can be a good defender. The question is he always? And I thought that he also yesterday, he did have 2 rebounds. And there was one that I remember that had that sort of that very difficult situation where, you're in a crowd and he was able to come up with the rebound, which, listen, we need more of that, especially if you're going to be the likes of Michigan in this conference with those kind of bigs, and even Michigan State. You're going to have to do that. That's it's critical. And I hope that he can continue taking a step up. Let's get some comments out here. Kevin says, is this the result of Gard's management of Blackwell's minutes? This is back to the discussion about his tiredness. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, there could be a variety of reasons why he's looking maybe a little worn down. I mean, it's really hard to say. Most of these kids should be able to hold up like throughout the season. He is a sophomore. I'll give him that. But like he does some heavy lifting out there. And for a player that's out there, he is a two-way player, even though I don't think he's been great defensively this year. He's a guy who has to play hard physically as opposed to being able to just blow by people and get to the rim. So he does take a beating out there. And that's something you need to kind of look at him and be like, this is a guy who's taken his lumps throughout the season that can wear you down a little bit. Like, it's not the same as just cleanly getting to the rim and dunking. He's a guy who's basically every time he goes up to the rim, it's contested and he's taking body contact. That's going to take its toll on you.
And he's playing point guard often, which is a whole nother like realm of, or even mental capacity that's needed, which he has, but it takes more of a toll on you. I think Janicki's minutes and McGee's minutes will both increase, but actually after yesterday's Janicki game, hopefully he can eat into some of those Blackwell minutes and they can manage it a little bit better. Tyler Strieber asked, and I wanted to touch on this. He says, is being placed in Milwaukee almost a lock now after yesterday? And is that going to be good or bad for us? So I've said a couple times about Milwaukee, and then someone on yesterday's show did put in the comments, we didn't get to it, but that it's something about Rajeev should remember that we've lost in Milwaukee in the last 2 times we were there in the round of 32. Yes, I know that. I was wrong about the Pittsburgh game that I talked about a few weeks ago. But I don't care. I still want to be in Milwaukee. You're never going to convince me that being in a place that is literally going to be 75% red. And I mean, I've been in those games in Milwaukee. It's a packed house and there's going to be tons of Badger fans. Yes, I want that because we have a very high tempo, 3-point heavy shooting team that can go on a lot of runs that, and our defense is not very good. We're going to need that crowd presence. If we can play 2 games in Milwaukee, even though we don't have the best record in Milwaukee in the tournament, I think it's critical. Is it a lock? No. But I do think that if we finish in the top 3 seed, we'll probably get there. But it depends on who else is going to be, in that. There's always 2 pods, right? So out of the, there's 8 pod sites, and Milwaukee's one of them. If we can go Milwaukee into Indianapolis for the Midwest region, or even coming out west, since we've done well out west historically. When we've gone to the Final Four, they've always been out of the West. I do want Milwaukee. I know we don't have the best record, but I don't care. Give me 75% home crowd all day, every day.
I will say I feel like we're being a little harsh on this team's defense. They're not a great defensive team. They are a top 50 defense. We're talking out of 300 teams in college basketball. So they're not bad defensively. They're just not dominant. And I think when we look at them, part of the issue is they're probably better as a group than they are as individual defenders. Like, I think that you don't see them get just flat out beat defensively where somebody just gets a clean run at the rim. But there's nobody out there that you look at right now that you say this guy's a plus individual defender. But I think for the most part, I look at them and I'm like, they're more than fine for everyone until we probably get to the Sweet 16. Like, they should be able to hold up until that point. And at that point, you're playing good versus good. And it's going to be more of a struggle because you're going to probably have 2 guys that are legit studs on every team you're playing at that point.
Yeah, Tyler said earlier, Bo's 100% right because Bo Dragon had a similar comment. That's what makes me terrified come March. If we play a poor shooting game with an opponent with big men, we're effed.
That's one place I will agree. The interior defense is scary.
But the thing is, like, you're not playing those teams as a 3 seed playing a 14. Like you're not. Yes, you could have a guy that you could have big men, but you're not playing Danny Wolf and Golden in as a 14 seed. So like. I think, and then you have to remember that Crowell is in a very experienced center that although he doesn't always have great offensive output, in that kind of a game, he's going to cook. And if they double team him, we've got 3-point shooters for days. Look, I will be terrified if we lose in the first round. I will be mortified. But I really don't see that happening because we're likely going to be a 3 seed at this point, if not better. I just don't see that being a thing. But we'll see. I mean, anything can happen.
One thing I will say is, too, when it comes to like big men, the Golden is the guy that's the type of guy that's a problem for Wisconsin. Danny Wolf, if you have more of a finesse big, Wisconsin's going to be okay. They're going to struggle when they get somebody who wants to be physical on the interior and just bang around. And we saw Winter can't do it. Like Golden just absolutely abused him when we played Michigan the first time.
Golden abuses most teams he plays.
And he does. And that's because he's physical enough where he can just go through you to the rim. And that's where Wisconsin's going to struggle. And I don't know how many of those guys there are.
Yeah.
Maybe if we make a run in this tournament, we may see one of those guys the entire time.
Right. And that's exactly the thing. Right now, look, it's all matchup based. That's why I'm a huge fan of, the conference season, because it's more of a balanced thing. March is all about matchups, but we still have to do it. We still got to win. And there's no doubt about that. All right, let's do a little buy or sell. The first one is going to be something we talked about a little bit yesterday, but I wanted to rehash it and get people's thoughts in the chat. Buy or sell, Justin, best team since 2015.
I'm buying on that. I think it is. I don't think it's particularly close, to be quite honest.
Wow. Okay. We were 25-8 the Johnny Davis year that we lost in the second round.
This team is so much deeper than what that team was. Like you legitimately could suffer, and I don't want it happening, but you could have somebody go down on this team and they could probably withstand it in the first couple of rounds. It's probably going to hurt you if you get beyond the round of 32. For everyone but maybe Tonje. I think he's the only guy that I'd look at and say, if something happens to him, you're probably in trouble. But he's your best scorer. Like, that's any team in the tournament that if that happens to them, they're in trouble. But I don't think it's particularly close. I think that you have far more depth in terms of scoring, and there's far less lulls with this team than we've seen from pretty much every Badger team since. The last one that I would say is potentially in the running for is maybe the Nigel Hayes 2016 team, when they ended up making the run with that and ended up losing on that last second 3.
Yeah. I'm buying it as well. I think that it's about as I've said many times, really good Badger teams historically, including that 2015 team, when all 5 starters can shoot, and in fact, all 9 players can shoot the 3, that is an incredible weapon that allows us to spread the floor in such a unique way and have performances, offensive outputs like we had yesterday against Purdue, where we had 1.45 points per possession, which is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. By the way, we didn't touch on this. 18 assists yesterday, 3 turnovers. 3 turnovers as a team. That's you're not losing to anybody when you play like that. Okay, buy or sell, Justin. Blackwell and Winter are both on this roster next year.
I think that if Gard has the type of season that they potentially could have, this is where it's so important for you to experience success with your program. If they make a Sweet 16 run, the purse strings are going to open. Plus, we're going to see some massive things change within college basketball prior to next season. So I think both of them are I've talked about Blackwell potentially being able to push himself into that because I'm just not sure there's a ton of areas where you'd look at where he can get significantly better before dipping his toe. Ryan made some pretty good sense on the turnover aspect of it. He needs to prove he can take a little bit better care of the ball. And I think he does need to prove that he can hold up a little bit better, but I don't see him as being a guy who's a lock for anything like that at this point. I just don't think that he's that level of consistently good at this point where you look at him and say this is a guy who can test the waters for the draft. And I don't see either one of them getting away if the season ends the way we expect to with NIL, especially with I do think it's going to be a little bit more restrictive heading into next season. I
worry a little bit about Blackwell testing NIL waters. I don't know what I mean. Listen, because the reason I say that is because Wisconsin is not, based on what we've seen, what we've known for the last couple of years, is not really in the upper echelons of the NIL dollar thing. So I'm worried about that. Chucky left, obviously, and we, and I know there were other reasons for that, but ultimately he went for a payday too. And so I don't know if Blackwell gets attraction from other teams. Is he going to leave for a payday? I hope not. I hope he can continue to grow here. But Winter, I think, will be on the team next year for sure. I do worry a little bit about that for sure.
This is where I push back with the whole being a 22-13 team or 22-14 or whatever we were last year and losing in the first round. That's where people look at it from an NIL expenditure and say, I'm not willing to throw that kind of money at it for this quality of a team. If we go 25-6 or whatever, we're going to end up being going into the postseason and have, a decent tournament run where, like I said, we make a Sweet 16 or potentially even an Elite 8. People are going to suddenly be like, hey, I want to see what the opportunity is this coming year with this team. And you'll see people be willing to throw money out there because they're going to look at it and say, like, these guys are really good players. They're capable of taking us deep. And if that's the case, they're far more willing to throw money out there. I think Wisconsin, and this is where people that argue that we're just not competitive with it, I think they just don't understand that the way Wisconsin looks at it is I'm willing to provide money, but I'm not going to throw money at something that's not providing value. And Wisconsin hasn't been providing value. More so they've had it in basketball than in football, but in neither spot. So it's really hard for them to sit there and have people be like, I want to pay money for a 6-6 team in football or a basketball team that is a fringe tournament team. And I think that's where this season like this, where you see a lot of positive and a lot of progression in terms of what this team can be going forward in terms of style of play and everything else for the program standpoint, that makes people want to invest. That gets excitement into the program and makes them want to be, make sure that we have the most opportunity to maximize what we have.
And I also think the offensive style that we're playing helps out too, because these guys want to be in the system, right? And we're going to attract more people out of that as well. Okay, Justin, buy or sell, and I'm going to give you some numbers to attach to this. Klesmit, who's been playing better, gets out of his three-point slump and averages over 30% for the season. Now, here's what that would take. That we have 6 games left in the season, in the regular season. If he hits 40% for those 6 games, based on how many he's been taking, let's say he takes 6 a game. So can he get over 30% by basically shooting 40% for the rest of the season? Buy or sell that he gets that?
Oh man, I want to buy. I think until I could see him show some type of consistency. See, one of the things that I didn't love about him yesterday was from the perimeter, I didn't feel like he set himself a lot. It was a lot of leaning shots. Like he hit the first one, but it was actually kind of a tough fadeaway. Like when he caught it, he was kind of like on the move and fading away from the rim when he put up the shot. And I didn't totally love the shots that he was taking from 3 in this game. Now, some of them he was kind of forced into it from an opportunity standpoint, but at this point, it just feels like he's not clicking. And it's hard for me to say he's going to be 40% when I'm not seeing any type of consistency from him.
It's crazy to me that Max Klesmit needs to average 40% for the next 6 games, generally based on, now I did that math based on him shooting 6 per game, to actually get to 30% on the season. That is absurd. This is on
Wasn't he like a 38% shooter last year?
Yeah, something like that, maybe 37. But yeah, on paper, certainly one of our best shooters. I'm selling this too. I don't think he's going to get there. I still think he will have that one game where he shoots like 7 of 9 or something like that, and he goes absolutely nuclear. But yikes. Okay, last one for buy or sell before we get into our Big Ten chat. Gilmore is the best rim protector on this team. Buy or sell?
I think that's obvious. I do think that Nolan Winter has gotten better as the season's gone on. You see guys this is where I see growth from him. When you see guards starting to penetrate downhill, they're not attacking the rim against Winter. they're kind of hesitant to go at him. You don't really see that with Crowell. Like when they see Crowell in the paint, you see guys just not afraid to go up and go after him. Winter has forced some guys to hesitate a little bit and adjust, and I think his athleticism is helping him. But it's absolutely Gilmore, and I don't think it's particularly close at this point because he's more physical too. So I think that he's probably the best in terms of shot blocking and also just holding up physically.
I mean, if I would have said that at the beginning of the season and said Carter Gilmore is our best rim protector, people would have been like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, that's where we are.
Best post defenders coming into the season. I just don't think Crowell's exceptional at that.
He's not. Crowell's pretty good at his positioning to kind of limit touches on the block, but Carter Gilmore and also Gilmore, it's about how he's playing. I mean, last year he was basically the same guy, same physique, but he wasn't playing with as much passion and heart, at least in my opinion. And the way he's playing, how hard he's been working, Gilmore is affecting things more than he was because of the confidence level that he has. It's incredible.
It's definitely a carryover. I think you're right.
I've been looking at the comments, and I feel like we should look at the score of the Iowa Maryland. Oh wow! Oh, Maryland is up 91-64. Holy crap! That game's done.
Iowa's absolutely cratering to end the season.
They sure are. So back to that kind of on that topic. I wanted to talk about the Big Ten a bit. So winning the game against Purdue, Justin, has put us into the discussion for Big Ten championship. Now, right now, too bad. Michigan played Ohio State today, and if you watch that game, boy, oh boy, they almost lost, except when Ohio State's best player, Thornton, their point guard, had an air ball from 5 feet away to end the game. That was brutal. Really, really would have been nice to have that loss for Michigan. Nonetheless, there are 6 games left in the season. Just to break this down for you, as I always say, if you take care of business at home and you split on the road, you're going to end up near the top of the conference. Justin, we are 5-3 on the road in this conference. 5-3 on the road. We've already done that. We've already won half our games on the road. We have 2 left. We should win 1. We've got at Michigan State and at Minnesota. 5-1 at home. Had we beat that Michigan team at home, that really close game early in the season before the Big Ten season kind of kicked off, we would be number 1 in the conference right now. We would be sitting at the top. So that's critical. But there's a lot going on here. I'm going to put up a graphic here. We're going to talk through this, Justin. This is these are the contenders right now. Michigan and records at the top, 12-2. Michigan State's 11-3. Purdue's 11-4. We are 10-4. We each have 6 games left except Purdue, who has 5 games left. Looking at this, let's talk through this a little bit. So you all know Wisconsin's schedule is we all should know that by now. We have our next 3 games are at home, right? And 4 of the last 6 are at home. Illinois, Oregon, Washington in a 3-game stretch. Then at Michigan State and Minnesota, and then home to Penn State. It's really nice finishing the season off, by the way. If you look at the other teams, Michigan State, and Purdue, look at their last game of the season. Purdue's at Illinois. Michigan State is playing Michigan in East Lansing. It's quite the run here. Looking at this, Justin, do you feel like when you look at this run in for all these teams that we actually have a shot at getting to the top of the conference and winning it?
I think absolutely. I think you look at it right now, and Purdue's probably got the closest schedule to ours.
Yes.
We are tied with them and have the tiebreaker. So if we finish out and we have the same record as them, we're going to get I don't know how it plays. I'd have to look at tiebreakers, but if it's just the 2 of us, I would think the head-to-head comes into play and we would end up being ahead of them. It
definitely does for seeding in the Big Ten tournament, but I do not believe it is, and I could be wrong about this, but in the past, all that matters is record. You will share the title. If with the record, I don't think head-to-head means anything for actually awarding the Big Ten championship.
I wasn't sure if it was 3 teams, if it was multiple teams, because remember a few years back when it was a 3-way tie. I feel it's a split championship. I think it's really just about the tournament seeding because really we're still running an inbound schedule. So I think it's fair to not have that be a factor because the schedule is imbalanced. So yeah, when I look at this, I think this is really interesting because Michigan State, first of all, has a brutal road. So let's just eliminate them from discussion, I think, because they're hosting Purdue. They go to Michigan. They go to Maryland. Then they host us at Iowa and Michigan at home. They are playing 4 of their 6 remaining games are against this group of 4 teams, right? These contenders, as we're calling them.
They play Purdue, they play Michigan, they play it with us, and they play Michigan again. I don't think Michigan State's gonna keep this going. Now they do play Michigan this week, or at the end of this week, which is going to be critical. Michigan does get a lot of their tough games at home. Like, they do play Michigan State to end the season, but they play Maryland at home. They play Illinois at home. They play Michigan State at home. I am worried about Michigan, especially since they did not get their loss today. But Justin, I feel like I do see a path here still. I mean, you look at this and I'm like, if we can get our next 3 at home, and then let's say we lose to Michigan State, that's still 5 losses, which I don't think 5 gets it done, because I don't think Michigan's going to lose 3 games, but it sure is possible. I mean, Purdue's got a really tough run too. They've got at Michigan, at Illinois to end the season, UCLA coming to West Lafayette.
Yeah, the way I look at this is, if our biggest is probably we need to probably run the table and hope that Michigan State trips up Michigan a few times, which it's possible for sure. I think that they can defend it at a high enough level that they can cause some problems. But I think that's what you're looking at, because you probably need Michigan State to trip up Michigan twice, and you need Illinois to take them out too.
Yeah, and if someone in the chat knows, like I said, I don't really believe that if we tie with record, I think that's it. Like, that's the Big Ten title is based on record, because it's still an inbound schedule. It's not like we played Illinois twice, other teams didn't. So like, I don't really think that's the case, but yeah, I really, really like what I see here. So I do think winning the Big Ten is probably going to mean running the table, because I think 16-4 gets it done. Looking at that schedule, I don't see Michigan dropping 3 games. I see them dropping 2. One of the Michigan State games likely, and then maybe another one. So at that point, you're looking at 4 being the benchmark. 16-4 wins the conference. 15-5, which is what I think we're probably going to end up with, comes in second. But look, we had to beat Purdue to have a shot at it, and we did. We have to beat Michigan State, most likely, to have a shot at it. But first things first, we've got a 3-game stretch here of Illinois, Oregon, and Washington that are all at home. Which one worries you the most?
I think it's Illinois. I don't think it's close. Yeah. They're capable of definitely tripping us up. The other 2 games, in most years, I would have probably been worried about Oregon, but I just think that we're too efficient for them. Like, we're athletic enough and we're too efficient for them to be able to stay with us an entire game. I just think we'll eventually pull away with our offensive capabilities.
Yeah, and Bo Dragon says we definitely leapfrog Purdue and Michigan State. I agree. I think that Michigan State is done for, but now listen, they could run the table in their schedule and be fine, but I don't see that happening. They've got such a hard thing. And remember, we've already won 5 games on the road. Those other teams haven't done that. So that's a really big key of it as well. Now, Michigan certainly got a couple big road wins. They won at Indiana. They won at Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that Mr. October, great comment, by the way, here. Going out on a limb, we'll finish a bit higher than our preseason 12th. Yes. As always,
it's not even possible for us to do that anymore.
I mean, you can't count out Wisconsin. We're like, and Gard said it as much in his press conference yesterday, like very similar to Purdue and Michigan State. We're always near the top of the conference. Yeah, we've had a couple of years where we've been down, but this is where Wisconsin basketball belongs, which I've said all the time. Compete for the Big Ten and then advance in the tournament. Now, getting a first-round exit is just not acceptable, and I really, really hope that's the case. Mark F. did confirm, says championship based on record, no tiebreakers necessary. That's what I thought. Definitely is not a big deal for tiebreakers. So we just got to get there. I think Illinois scares me the most, too, by the way. I'm going to be doing a preview show for them on Locked On Badgers tomorrow. Yeah, Illinois game is definitely concerning. Kasparis Yakuchonis is really, really good. Riley has been really good coming on lately. It's a concern of a game, and it's also a concern that it's only in a couple days, right? It's Tuesday after a really tough game. Not tough. I mean, it's
an emotional letdown after.
Right.
Better.
Right. Now, Illinois has not had a good run lately. They have 7 losses in conference, so they're basically out of it at this point. But that's still going to be tough. They've got a lot of good athletes, and I'm worried about that game a lot. Oregon, I'm not concerned about so much. Because again, it's at home and we should be all right. Washington, we should win. The last 2 games of the season, Minnesota, Michigan, Penn State. If you want to win the Big Ten, you got to win those games. It's really just the Michigan State game that obviously is on paper should be a loss.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, Purdue was a loss too. None of us, well, you kind of did, but for the record, most people did not think we were going to be Purdue.
Think we win today.
Justin did text us yesterday in our group chat with Ryan. Justin said, I think we're going to win. And Ryan and I said, we're not going to win. So then, hey, you know what? That's that. So you feel like you don't think we're going to win the conference though? Do you feel like we get there? Do you feel like we could? I mean, where you're at, what's your sort of prediction at this point?
I think it's too out of our hands at this point. I think there's a chance they do run the table to end the season here, but it might not be good enough.
If we run the table, we're going to win the Big Ten because four losses.
You're right. That's still going to require 2 Michigan losses.
Yes, it would. Although I just see that happening. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
But I think that of the teams that they have between, like, other than us, Michigan has the easiest time running offense in the entire conference. And that's because they have 2 bigs that can play off each other and run offense through, which means they typically are getting good, efficient shots near the rim. And their guards are athletic and they can shoot a little bit. So they're a trouble team. Like they can grind. You saw it today when they were playing the Ohio State, who was playing really well for the most part in that game. And Michigan just at times offensively just gets on them and makes it look easy. Like they're getting back cuts and stuff like that because people are so afraid of their bigs.
Yeah. I think we go 15-5, which is a great record with nothing to be upset about. I think we finished second only because Michigan did beat us. So that's a huge advantage. Had we won that game, we'd be at the top of the conference, but having only 2 losses at this point is pretty impressive. And with Wolf and Golden and how well they play, very few teams can stop them. As you just mentioned, it's very difficult. I do think they win with probably 4 losses. So I think we finish second. But who knows? We'll see. We'll leave it there. We're going to be back next week, of course, to talk about more basketball. We'll also touch on football a bit as we prepare for the spring and some different positional battles we're looking for. Justin, final thoughts before we close the show on a very basketball-heavy and deserved basketball-heavy show. I mean,
we've been waiting for this for a really long time. Hopefully it continues to roll the way it's been going. We've needed this since 2015 to have us kind of get back to the standard that I think we were getting accustomed to. And I'm glad to see that we're taking a big step in that direction again.
We were a 5 seed in last year's tournament. We are projected officially by the committee as of yesterday, a 3 seed. That's their current, if they were doing it right now. That was before the Purdue game. So right now we're probably a 2. Yeah. Probably a 2 because we were 11. So we were at the third sort of 3 seed. But nonetheless, we're probably going to be a top 10 team in the AP tomorrow, which is great. There is definitely a path if we win the Big Ten and if we win out to get to a 1 seed. Unlikely though, 2 or 3 is probably where we're going to be. And that puts us in a really good position to advance. And the last thing I will say is it also puts Gard in a difficult position because advancing as a 2 or 3 seed is an absolute requirement. Mm-hmm. You cannot lose as a 2 or 3 seed in the first round. That will take this season and sour it completely. We cannot have that happen. We need to get that done. We will be back again next week. Thanks for listening. And as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.